Hello everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on investing in notes. My name is Alia Ott, and I represent a company called Inspired Capital Partners. I'm joined today with my colleague, Terri Garner. Terri and I are two of the managing members of Inspired Capital Partners. We run a small hedge fund based out of Las Vegas, Nevada, and Southern California. And our team as a whole has over 140 years of experience in wholesaling, rehabbing, rental properties, residential and multifamily properties, private lending, and note buying, which we're going to focus on today, as well as real estate education. So our focus and our hope is that we can share with you some tips and ideas on investing in notes today that will be beneficial for either your short-term goals or your long-term retirement goals. So today what you will learn are two timely strategies for today's real estate market, both lending to local rehabbers and buying non-performing bank notes. We're going to discuss why we love investing in paper assets, the benefits of being the bank and owning paper versus property. We're going to tell you how to manage risk while maximizing profit. We're going to cover a few examples and show you some creative workout strategies that you can use specifically with non-performing notes, and where we're investing in and specifically why we're investing in those areas so that it can give you some idea of maybe where you would like to invest, whether you're in-state, out-of-state, if you're based here in Southern California or if you're located someplace else. We'll give you some ideas on where and why to invest in certain markets. So first, let's focus on property versus paper. This is the distinction of being a landlord versus being a note holder. So the first distinction here is the landlord receives their rental income after the bank, the property manager, the taxes and insurance are paid. The note holder typically gets paid a steady amount plus late fees if there's any issue. So opposite to the landlord, they're paying those late fees. The note holder receives extra income if the amount is late. And they typically get paid first along with the taxes and insurance. A landlord is responsible for tenants, toilets, and other headaches that go along with owning property. While the note holder is responsible for maintaining the home, the note holder is released from those specific responsibilities and is just really entitled to receive their monthly payments. The note holder is able to foreclose and take back the asset if the landlord stops paying, which of course the landlord is in a position to risk losing their home if by chance they can't pay, or they might have a tenant in the property who stops paying the rent and becomes a problem. They go into default. The note holder is the one that can take that asset. The landlord is responsible for any and all damages to the property, and the note holder is insured as the last payee should something happen to the property that's maybe bigger damage than something that a tenant might do, let's say a hurricane or a flood. The note holder typically is listed as the last payee, and that's something as a note holder you're going to want to make sure that you have your name on the insurance, whether you're lending to somebody as a rehabber or whether you're purchasing a non-performing note. The landlord or the property owner is typically the last to get paid when the sale closes. So at the end of escrow, the property owner is the person who receives the balance of whatever is left over. The note holder has the safest position typically. It's ahead of the owner's equity anyway, and they would receive their payouts first after commissions. And so for all these reasons, we love being the bank. There's so many other benefits to being the bank, which we'll cover as we go through the notes and private lending example. I also wanted to talk about lending versus non-performing notes. So there are some differences between lending to a local fix and flip rehabber and purchasing non-performing notes that are already in default. The first of that is which you're creating a loan in the case of lending to a rehabber. For a non-performing loan, you're purchasing an existing loan that has been distressed or in default for maybe months or even years. And you're typically purchasing that non-performing note at a discount where you're paying face value or you're lending at face value rather on a loan that you're creating for a rehabber. For rehabbers, because you're assuming that this is going to be a performing loan, you're going to receive steady monthly interest payments. With non-performing notes, you have to work to get that payment stream back up and running, if ever at all. And there's a number of different exit strategies. A reperforming note or a modified loan are just two of those exit strategies. As for lending on a fix and flip, there's really just one exit strategy, and that's to pay off the note at the end of the period or when the property sells. So when a lot of people get started with buying non-performing notes, one of the things that they want to do is either go look at the property themselves or send somebody out to go inspect the property. You can do an exterior drive-by of a non-performing note, but because of lending laws, you can't enter the property. That's violating something that's associated with the borrower. In contrast, when you're lending to a local fix and flip rehabber, typically you can do a walkthrough inspection if you choose to. You can send an appraiser or a broker out there to do what's called a BPO, a broker price opinion, so that you really kind of get the inside and outside scoop on the property. Again, with a non-performing note, you have to make some judgment as to the condition of the property based on the exterior. And sometimes that could be deceiving. You might have an old exterior and a lovely inside, or you might have a disastrous inside and a lovely exterior. But in general, the outside typically reflects the condition of the inside. Lending on fix and flip. So you're lending to a non-owner occupied borrower. This is somebody who has a business of fixing and flipping. They don't live in that house. And as a result, this could be a much faster foreclosure than something that is owner occupied where there's some borrower protection laws. You may be familiar with something called HAMP, which is a modification program that's been instated by the government to keep homeowners in place. So there are some legalities related to non-performing notes that you have to work around. There is protective equity typically on fix and flip rehabs, at least there are on the loans that we create. However, with non-performing notes, you're typically purchasing a loan that's underwater, meaning that the unpaid principal balance of that loan is much greater than the current market value of that property as it is today. We find that the lending process is fairly straightforward and simple. There's a bit of upfront paperwork, but once you've got that note performing, there's typically very little to do other than service the monthly payments. When you have a non-performing note, there are other processes and systems involved in that, including boarding your loan, servicing that loan if it does ever get performing again. You may entitle yourself to work with a loss mitigation company who handles all of the work out and the letters that need to go out to a non-performing borrower. So there is a little bit more involved in the non-performing note side. You can set a term limit for your fix and flip loans, and so you have a very predictable time frame in which you're working with. As far as non-performing notes, it could take 1 month, it could take 5 months, it could take 3 or 4 years before you finally get that note worked out. So the end term is a little less predictable on a lot of the non-performing notes. You can go a little bit by state guidelines in terms of how long it takes to foreclose on a property, but more often than not, you've got a borrower who you might be able to coordinate with and get a short sale approved for them so that they can move on from that property and avoid a foreclosure. And finally, the final difference here that we've got listed is just the management of risk. So there's risk to every investment that you do, whether it's a performing or non-performing loan. We manage risk by lending at a low loan-to-value ratio based on the after-repair value on a fix and flip loan. Typically that's 65–70% of the repair value. And with non-performing notes, there could be a little bit more risk. We manage our risk by buying these notes at a steeper discount. And assuming that a handful of the notes in our portfolio may or may not work out, but the upside is tremendous, and I've never seen a better market opportunity for buying non-performing notes than we see today. So we'll go into some of the potential ROI that you can see on some of the loans that we did as an example, and you'll get a better understanding of kind of the risk reward there between non-performing notes and performing notes. So talking a little bit specifically about the performing notes, where we're doing a fix and flip rehab loan. Let's assume that we have a house in Orange County. Probably your average price home is about $500,000. And we're going to do a loan based on the loan to value ratio, 65%. So the loan that we're going to create for this is up to $325,000 or 65% of what the value of the property is. How we're protecting ourselves and managing the risk is by having this great cushion of protective equity. So the borrower comes in, hopefully they're purchasing that property for somewhere around $300,000, and they're probably putting a little bit of their own money into that to do the rehab. We're protected by what that property is going to resell for, even if it has to be a quick resale. Let's say the house is worth $500,000, you could do a quick resale, especially in this market, for probably $490,000, and who knows, it might go up over $510,000 if it's looking really good. So that's one way that we manage the risk with our fix and flips. Other ways that we manage risk are by having the property valued by a licensed appraiser or broker. The broker price opinion, also known as a BPO, is essentially a desktop analysis combined with a broker walking the property, probably taking pictures of the property and going on the inside and giving an inspection report as to what they see based on their knowledge. And they're going to give that an opinion of value based on what the after repair value of that property is going to be in the current market. We use licensed loan brokers to transact the majority of our deals. Anything that involves other people or a higher loan amount is going to be processed through a loan broker who's licensed in the state where the business is taking or where this loan is transacting. The property needs to pass the takeover rehab test. And so what that means is Terry and I take a look at every property and we say, okay, is this something that we want to take over if everything goes bad? And because we have the rehab experience and we have a lot of connections with other rehabbers, we feel very comfortable in managing the risk in this capacity, where we could turn this over to another rehabber should we end up taking the property back, or we could finish the rehab ourselves. Also, construction draws are released as the project progresses. So let's say, for example, the borrower gets a really, really great price on the deal, and it requires a lot of rehab, which is a portion of our loan to them. If it's over the purchase price of the property, what we'll do is we'll hold the money in the escrow account, and as they complete milestones within the project, then we'll release additional funds so that it's managing the risk in terms of what we're lending out as the project is progressing. Terry and I have done dozens of deals so far. As we have a 100% track record on the return of principal and the investment amount that the borrower, or sorry, the lender, the private lender is expecting. A lot of times we're using our own money, but occasionally we'll collaborate with other people who want to earn some passive income, and we so far been able to complete 100% track record. Pipeline of deals, we select quality deals and quality borrowers. We work with a number of brokers in Southern California who bring us deals and have pre-vetted a number of their borrowers as well, who performed on a number of deals with them, and they can kind of vouch for their track record. We often take a look at past experience in terms of their HUD statements and what's been closing for those borrowers, so that we know that we're not dealing with a first-time out investor. And then we have, like I mentioned, relationships with first-position lenders. And that's really important because we need to know if we're lending in second position, which we often do. We provide a lot of gap funding for our borrowers. we need to know how much the payments are on that first position loan, what the total amount is that they owe, and what the duration of time is, so that we never lend longer in terms of the period of time that the first position is lending. And then lastly, we keep a close watch on the market cycle. Some of you in California may have heard of Bruce Norris. He predicts a lot of the market cycles and looks at a number of really important key indicators, such as employment rates, the housing supply, the duration of housing supply, the general mood of the market. There are a number of factors that make up the general market cycle, but right now we're experiencing rapid appreciation in California. And so that does help manage our risk in terms of making sure that the protective equity is there and continues to be there throughout the duration of the project. As we start seeing things cool down, then we may scale back the amount that we're lending out to borrowers. But we still have that great cushion of equity there should the market cycle turn a little bit, or should something happen with that project. So we'll go through a typical deal. The rehab loans on fix and flips are loaned at up to 70% of the fair market value after repairs. The duration is typically up to 12 months. We've done a few 6-month loans and an 18-month loan, but most of them are 12 months in duration. We do lend in first or second position as a deed of trust, and that all gets recorded. And then the rates that we've received on interest rates have been 8% or greater, which is annualized and typically paid out on a monthly basis. These are all non-owner occupied. There's a lot of lending laws regarding owner-occupied properties, so we just avoid those. We just focus specifically on non-owner occupied with our performing rehabber loans. And those are 1 to 4 unit residential properties, most of them located in Southern California. We have done some in Arizona, Nevada, and Northern California as well. And I just want to mention this is not an offer to sell securities. Anybody who's working with us needs to be qualified by our company and receive the appropriate documentation. So I want to mention that too. This is purely for education only, and hopefully you're getting some great ideas on how to structure some loans for yourself. Here's a quick example of a previous deal that we've done. This was a B-rated neighborhood, a nice house up in Los Angeles, comfortable 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square feet. And you can see here we've calculated out the after repair value, the purchase price, and the monthly interest rates, as well as the amount that was on the trust deed for the first and the second position loan. And as you can see, the combined loan-to-value ratio did not exceed 70%, stay within our parameters. And I'm mentioning the dollar amount on this, $40,000, was the second position trust deed. So for somebody who's just getting into investing, specifically those who are in Southern California and or maybe even the San Francisco Bay Area, prices are astronomical. To get a house for under $300,000 is very difficult. So when we're seeing these loans come through, what's really nice is if you have $40,000, $50,000, even $100,000, that might not go very far in the first position, but on the second position loan, you can do a single deed of trust with one investor, and that keeps things very clean. So that's part of the reason why we like second position loans, is because we can keep them small and diversify across a number of borrowers. So we just wanted to take a quick moment here and share a few beautiful photographs of some of the finished product that our borrowers have completed. We're really, really pleased with the quality of workmanship that has been performed for a number of our borrowers here. And as you'll probably guess here by taking a look at some of these photographs, some of the homes that we've been focused on are upscale homes along the beach areas and inland communities that might have a little bit of acreage. And that's right now where we're finding quite a bit of the margins that are much more difficult to get on the rehab loans at the 500 and under price point. So they may take a little bit longer to turn, but they're well worth it. So with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about limited inventory for discounted properties. So one of the reasons why we got into the non-performing notes is because the REOs and the short sales started to dry up. Even for our borrowers, it became harder and harder for our borrowers to find great deals. And so knowing the industry of lending, it was an easy leap over to start working on the non-performing note side. And as you can see in this chart, it's almost a 10-to-1 ratio of the volume of non-performing notes as compared to actual foreclosures, also known as REOs. So, we just have more access to deals on the non-performing note side. And in some cases, we could take a non-performing note and, if the borrower chooses not to cooperate in any sort of loan modification, we can take that property back, and then it does become an REO that we own in our own portfolio. And we have some strategies around that particular exit if we need to. So as I mentioned, the market opportunity in non-performing notes is tremendous right now, but I only see this lasting for probably another 3 to 5 years in kind of the volume that it is right now. We're seeing strong demand and good inventory at this moment. That can kind of change from quarter to quarter. A couple quarters ago, there was very little inventory, and all of a sudden it started to release again. So we're buying as much as we can with our fund as well as our IRA funds and taking advantage of this great opportunity that we have. Underwater loans are also regaining equity, and that's important to note, especially if you're purchasing second position loans where you might not have any equity coverage when you initially buy that note. And what I mean by that is if you buy a first, or let's say you buy a second position loan, it could be a HELOC or it could be a second lien, you're behind the first position lender. And as that property increases in value, what may have been an underwater loan for the first and second position lender may now only be a partial underwater loan for the second position lender. And that's a great thing for people, especially in hot markets like California, where we like to invest in seconds. You have the opportunity to have your equity covered in potentially a rather short period of time if you just been on that loan for a year or two. Or you can go back and maybe do a short sale with the borrower and help encourage them to move out of that property or move on to something that they can afford. There's a lot of different exit strategies in that regard. Another reason that we're starting to see a little bit more inventory is something called the loss share agreement with FDIC. These loss share agreements are expiring. When you have a loss share agreement, that's basically FDIC helping cover some of the loss for one bank who is taking over another bank and getting assets at a discount. So both the FDIC and the acquiring bank are sharing in that loss so that it can actually be profitable for them to work through some of those discounted assets. They are required to look at those loans and try to do a loan modification, oftentimes with owner-occupied borrowers. And if those don't work out, then they can finally sell that property after a specified period of time. That's why we're seeing more inventory now. And you may see a little bit more on the foreclosure side here in the next year or two. And lastly, millionaires are made from solving problems. I've always found this to be true for people who are seeking opportunity. Seek a problem and then find a solution that helps mitigate that problem or solve that problem. And that's where you'll find that you can create a tremendous amount of wealth. So here's just a couple articles regarding the loan sales that have been announced. FHA is announcing it's selling 20,000 notes to investors every year over the next 10 years. That's a long period of time. Fannie and Freddie have also been mandated to sell $400 billion in distressed notes over the next 5 to 6 years. And HUD has another $400 billion to sell as well. So the article that you see up here about Nova Bank, that's just one out of probably dozens, if not hundreds, of announcements similar to banks who have decided to sell their loans or have reached the end of a loss share agreement with the FDIC and can now move those mortgages onto a secondary market of purchasers like us and other hedge funds who want to purchase those non-performing notes. So going into a few exit strategies, Terry, you want to take over from here and discuss some of the workouts and exit strategies that we can do?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. So for non-performing notes or for even notes that you originate, there's actually two pieces of documents that make up the loan package. First is the promissory note, and the promissory note is really the document that contains all the terms of the loan. So for example, it's 30-year fixed loan at 5% interest. That's going to be listed in the promissory note. Then the other document, it's either a trust deed or a mortgage, depending what state you're in. That document is a document that gets recorded in the county where the property is located, and it attaches that promissory note to that property so that if anyone ever tries to sell off that property, they're going to see that this trust deed or mortgage is recorded at the county, and they know that promissory note needs to be paid off. So the exit strategies then, specifically on the non-performing note side, is there are 5 of them that we've listed here, and I'll just run through them briefly. First off, you buy the non-performing note, and you can just turn right around and sell the non-performing note. So say if you buy it at 30 cents on the dollar, you turn around and sell it for 35 cents on the dollar, or maybe 40 cents on the dollar. So you're wholesaling the note just like you might be wholesaling a property that you would purchase. The second one is a loan modification. Now here you would actually be contacting the homeowner and trying to do a workout with them. So perhaps they couldn't make their previous payments, but you might be able to reduce the monthly payment that they make, and it's something else that, something that's more affordable for them. Therefore you can get the loan modified and get it performing again. And then at that point, you can just hold on to it and keep the monthly cash flow payments coming in. Or you could choose to sell off the note as a performing note. You've turned it from a non-performing note into a performing note. That has higher value to it, so you can actually get some money from it that way. The third option is to approve a short sale. Now, let's say you approach the homeowner, they can't do a loan modification for whatever reason, you can't figure out how to make it work. Their only option for them is to leave the house, they understand that, or maybe they're already out of the house. What you could do is try to sell it. You're still just holding the note here. You don't own the property yet, but you sell the house, and because you're the bank, you approve the sale of the house even though it might be less than the actual unpaid principal balance left on the note. So because you're the bank, you can easily approve that short sale. But let's think about that as an example. Let's say the property was worth $100,000 and that the note on it had a balance of $150,000. Let's say you purchased it for $50,000. You approved the short sale at $100,000. There's still room for you to make money in that. So you're doing a favor. You're letting the homeowner out of a sticky situation, and you're still making a profit in it as well. The fourth option is a foreclosure, and this is, sometimes you can't even find the borrower. They've flown the coop and you can't even get a hold of them. Then you have no other choice but to actually go through the foreclosure process, hire an attorney, and depending on the state you're in, sometimes it's faster than in other states. But here's where you would actually go through the process, and you would actually get the deed to the house after you foreclose. You are now the owner of that property. You could either fix it up and then sell it on the retail market, or you could choose to sell it off to a retailer, to a rehabber, and have them fix it up. And then the fifth option there is something we call deed in lieu of foreclosure, and this is just what it says it is. You're asking the homeowner, hey look, why don't you just give me the deed to the property in lieu of me foreclosing on it. So it's a little bit of a friendlier option. We much prefer to do a deed in lieu instead of doing an all-out foreclosure. It's better for the homeowner. It's better for us as well. It's cheaper option than to go through the full foreclosure process, and it doesn't hurt the record, the credit record as much of the homeowner. So if we can get a deed in lieu of foreclosure, it's kind of like a cash for keys. Except this is a home for keys. So you give us the home, and we'll just let you go and forgive the debt. So those are the basic strategies that we use when we're looking for exits when we buy a non-performing note. So let me just run through a couple of examples here, some of each of these. The first one is a property that our team did in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. And you see the property there. When we bought it, this was back in September 2012. The current value at the time was $25,000, and the unpaid balance left on the loan was close to $67,000. So we were able to purchase this property for $7,500 and change. There were also some unpaid taxes. The homeowner, they hadn't been paying their mortgage, they hadn't been paying their taxes. So we needed to bring the taxes current. Taxes always are in a higher position than even a first position performing note. So let's say if they haven't paid taxes, the county has the right to foreclose on the homeowner regardless of what's going on with your loan. So that's why we want to make sure that those taxes are brought current. So in this example, our all-in value, considering both of those, was just over $10,000. And you can see as a percentage of the current value of the property, or even as a percentage of the unpaid principal balance, we're less than 50%. So we're buying this property at a great percentage rate, at a great discount. Now what we did with this, in March of 2013, we worked with the homeowner and we got them to agree to, and we executed on a deed in lieu of foreclosure. So they gave us back the deed, or they gave us the deed to the property, and we just let them walk away and forgave them of their debt. Now we own the house, and in this instance, we listed it at $29,900 on the market. We actually sold it 2 months later in June of this year for $24,000. Then we had some closing costs and some fees. So by the time you take that $24,000 coming in, subtract out your fees, subtract out your original all-in amount, we had a profit of just over $10,000 for a very nice return on investment of $136,000 when you annualize it. The next an example that I wanted to share is one in Shelbina, Missouri. And this is one we're actually still working on. So this is an extremely recent example. We just purchased this back in June of 2013. And it was vacant at the time, but we were able to get a hold of the homeowner and contact them. The current value when we purchased it was $25,000 with an unpaid principal balance of close to $69,000. We purchased this for just $11,000. And it did have a small amount of unpaid taxes, so we were all in for $11,563. So again, we're staying below our 50% of current value, which is usually what our target is. Now our exit strategy on this one is we are in the process of doing a short sale. So we still just own the note. We don't own the property yet. It's still in the homeowner's name. But we have put it on the open market and for sale, and we have 2 cash offers for $30,000. So even higher than what our original estimate was of $25,000 when we purchased it. And the realtor is actually going to go back to these 2 offers and ask them for highest and best offer. So might even get a little bit more than that. We do have some fees for executing on this strategy. So all in, if we assume we know we're at least going to get that $30,000. So with that, we're planning to close on escrow at the end of August, and we'll have a profit of $15,937. So cash on cash, it's 145%, and our return on investment when it's annualized is 695%. So this is a great one. We had such a high return because we've been able to execute on it so quickly. The next example is one in Hymera, Indiana. And this property is occupied. And this is an example of where we were able to go in and do a loan modification and get them re-performing. When we purchased it back in October of 2012, the current value was $33,000. The unpaid principal balance on it was $69,856. We purchased this for $11,000. They were paying their taxes, so they were at least keeping that current. So the percentage all in, we were at 33% of the value. The exit, as I mentioned, was a loan modification, which we finally came to terms and got everything ironed out and got the agreements done at the beginning of June of this year. And what we did is we left the entire unpaid principal balance amount intact, so they still owe the entire $69,000 and change. But what we did is just ask them, okay, we know what you were paying and you couldn't afford that. What can you pay? And it turns out that number was $336 a month. So that's fine. We do also pay, and then we pay this, we pay a servicer $30 a month for helping us collect the payments on the note and do the servicing of it. So when you annualize all that out, our yearly income on this property is $3,696. Now, as of yet, we still own this, and we could still just keep this and bring in that yearly income. Or the option here is we could choose to now sell this off as a performing note. But we're planning on keeping it, and if you look at what we've done and the way we calculated our profit here is because we still left that entire unpaid principal balance intact, that's what's owed to us. So if now the homeowner turns around and sells the property, we would either one have to approve a short sale if it's not up to that value as of yet, but we are still owed that entire income stream. So let's say market values go up as the economy starts to recover, we're still going to make that entire balance back. So our profit here is that entire $69,000 and change less our purchase price for a 34% return on investment when it's annualized. And then one other example I wanted to share with you. This one's kind of interesting. This one was in Cocoa, Florida, and the numbers look really good. We purchased it back in September 2012. The current value was $25,000. Unpaid principal balance $28,800. And the purchase price that we got it for was $75.47. There were no unpaid taxes on this. So when you look at the percentages, it looked like we're buying it at 30% of the current value. So great numbers on this one. Until we did a little bit more digging and found out that there was a city lien for bulldozing the property. Now, as we mentioned, this one was a vacant property. If you look at the picture, it was very, very vacant. There is no property there. So the house was already gone, and the city had come in, bulldozed it down, and then put this lien for their cost to do that of $102,000. Now, I'm not sure how they got their bulldozing expenses that high in the first place, but regardless, that is the lien that was on the property. So that all of a sudden turns everything upside down on this one. However, what we did is we got the deed to the property, and then we donated the house to Habitat for Humanity for the market value, the current market value of $25,000. Now, Habitat for Humanity, being Habitat for Humanity, has a lot more pull with the city and can go to the city and negotiate that lien of $102,000 off the records. And the city's doing something good, Habitat for Humanity's doing something good, and basically everyone wins in this case. So we knew that was the strategy going into this. And we're able to donate that. And then the profit that we show on this one is basically our tax write-off. So that $25,000 that we get to deduct on our taxes, less our tax rate for a company of 15%. And that's how we calculated out the profit for a 60% return on investment annualized. So those are just 4 quick examples of the different exit strategies that you can do for non-performing notes. You can see how there's a lot of different ways that you can exit the property, and even a property that has such a huge city lien on it, there are ways that you can exit it where everybody can win and you can still make money on it.
Yeah, Terri, that just kind of goes to show like how many different exit strategies you can deploy when you have a non-performing note. You know, in a situation where you do take the property back, if it's in an area that you love, you might want to rent it out, and you can create a new income stream that way if you choose to own the property and not just paper. So there's a lot of different ways, or you can sell it as a portfolio of maybe rental income. So a lot of different things you can do.
And that goes back to that example we talked about with the reperforming, where we're now making a yearly income on that. So
Right. Right. Yep.
That's a way to make cash flow without you ever being a landlord. And as we were mentioning earlier, having to deal with tenants and toilets.
Yep.
So if we move on then, just in the interest of time here, the next slide, this shows judicial and non-judicial states. Now what that refers to, I mentioned earlier that we have trust deeds and we have mortgage states. Basically, the purpose of those documents is to do the same thing, to attach the promissory note to the property. So the property is its collateral. But a trust deed is considered a non-judicial foreclosure, and a mortgage is considered a judicial foreclosure. So you can see California here, we are a trust deed state. Most of the West Coast states are as well. And then the judicial states are the ones in blue that you can see mostly on the East Coast. And then if you overlay on top of this,
oh, I no longer have the overlay, Terry. But we have some pricing over there, and it's really state by state specific, which is part of the reason why I took off the overlay. It kind of gave you an idea of when you're purchasing non-performing notes, what you might pay as a percentage of the unpaid principal balance. So out in California, it's what we call a diamond state, along with Nevada, Arizona, Texas, and Florida. Those are all considered diamond states. And even though it's a judicial state, foreclosures are longer in Florida, it's still a pretty hot market, especially as you get in the coastal southern parts of the state. You have a lot of interest from international investors and people that are snowbirds out of Canada and other colder parts of the United States. So you got a lot of interest there. But in essence, you might pay a different price for a non-performing note in California than you might pay for a non-performing note, let's say in Detroit or Ohio. And so depending on what your strategy is, you kind of have to figure out, sort of what you want to pay. Out in California, you might pay a premium of 75% of the unpaid principal balance on a first position note. Texas, you might pay 50%. Florida, I've seen them now trading at 50%. In other parts of the U.S., you might pay 30 to 50%. So it depends on a number of different factors. The main thing in showing you the judicial versus non-judicial states is really the duration and the process for handling foreclosures. As you get into some of those non-judicial states, it goes a little faster versus the ones that have to go through the courts. Can take a little bit longer, in some cases as much as 2 years. So that's the purpose of this slide.
Okay, so let me just talk a little bit about the states that we like to, and the cities where we like to invest. Indianapolis is a great city. It's in a hardest hit state. And as we mentioned, a hardest hit fund is a government program that provides some additional money for states that were hardest hit by the foreclosure industry, or by the foreclosure issue that we've been having with our economy. And so Indianapolis is one of those, as well as Ohio. And we like Columbus, Ohio, just because it has a stronger, diverser economy than other parts of Ohio. We also like Texas. As Alia was just mentioning, it has a fast foreclosure. It is a trust deed state, and they're very, very friendly to the investor. Their foreclosures are like 45 days, so they will get people out of there very, very quickly. Florida we really like, even though it is a judicial state and takes a little bit longer for the foreclosure. It is a very strong market as far as rentals. A lot of people still want to live in Florida. There's a lot of people from the New England area that want to move down to Florida. So it's still very, very desirable with the beaches and everything else that it has to offer, and the weather. You also have a lot of international buyers that are interested in Florida. So we do really like investing in Florida and buying notes in Florida. And if we can hold properties, that's a great place to hold them there too. And then we, of course, we live in California. We'd love to buy in California. On the first position note side, they tend to be quite a bit more expensive. So we prefer to buy second position notes in California. And I should say the metro areas of California, areas that are populated with a lot of people, San Diego, LA, et cetera, Orange County. And we can buy the second position notes at really great rates. And then we always buy them behind a performing first position note, and that ensures that we're going to stay in control of the property and the workout strategy that we have. And California is now seeing great recovery. We're starting to go back up in appreciation. So now the market is heating up, so it's a really, really great time especially to buy seconds in California. Next slide. We have some tips for you on buying notes, and we'll just kind of run through this really quickly. First of all, we always confirm the value of the property. As you saw from the examples I had, that we had current values listed on there, so you always want to know what the current market value is. And we always verify that by having an agent drive by. A lot of people will look on Zillow or Trulia or some of the other online sites, and we do that too just to give an idea. But really, you don't want to use those valuations. You want to have somebody drive by and at least kind of even see what the neighborhood's like, see what the condition of the property is from the outside. They can't go in, but try to confirm what they can from their drive-by. We do use Trulia to look at a crime map. It's a great quick way to understand what kind of crime is in that area. And if it's a high crime area, we just knock it off our list. We move on to other properties because there are so many other properties that we want to stay in the areas where there's low crime. We do review the collateral files. Now what a collateral file is, it's a file that's basically kept with all the documentation from the loan. So it's going to have that promissory note and that trust deed or mortgage, that package that we talked about several slides back. And it's going to show the transfer of ownership from the original note owner to the next note owner to the next note owner to the next note owner. So you want to make sure that all of that documentation is captured in the collateral file and that nothing's missing. We do review credit reports, especially when we're buying second position notes. We also call on taxes. As I mentioned, that taxes take precedent over a first position loan, so we want to make sure we understand what is owed and if it's going to tax sale and when. Another great tip is to collaborate with other note investors. Frequently we do joint venture partnerships, and it is a great way to, somebody might have money, somebody might have more time. You can share notes, you can sell notes between each other. It really will help grow your business. What we do want to do is avoid daisy chains, and this is when the owner of the note is selling it, and then that's being passed off to somebody else who's passing it off to somebody else who's passing it off to you. You don't really want more than one person in that daisy chain, and ideally you'd like to buy directly from the seller. And then finally, and this goes with any business really, do what you say. And this particular industry it's a very small community, and so word will get out very quickly. If you say you're going to buy something and you don't actually fund that purchase, word will get out very quickly, and people won't, the sellers won't want to work with you anymore. So if you're going to commit to buying, make sure you do follow through. Now, where to find note deals? There's a number of places. You can find retail note sites. There's FCI Exchange that sells them. Hedge funds, this is one of the places that we really like to buy, and we go directly to a source and we work with them. We've got relationships built up with these hedge funds where they buy them in bulk, and then they'll turn around and sell them to us. And sometimes they'll ask us to buy the entire tape, or a tape is just a list of all of the different notes or a pool of notes that they're selling. Sometimes they allow us to cherry pick and buy, one or two or a handful of them out of that entire pool. We also go to conferences. We partner, as we mentioned, with other note investors. In fact, that's how we got started, is partnering with a note investor who's more experienced. And we brought the money to the table, they did the workout, and we learned as we went along, and then we split the profits at the end. You can also get note deals from servicing companies, from LinkedIn groups, from banks. There's something called Lane Guide if you go on laneguide.com. And then reputable note brokers. As we mentioned, there are brokers. You just want to be careful of staying away from those daisy chains. So that hopefully gives you a great overview of both the lending side and the non-performing note side. What we covered today were ways to profit in today's real estate market from both non-performing notes as well as lending to local rehabbers. So whether you're originating the note by the private lending or you're buying an existing note with buying non-performing notes, you're owning the paper, and how that can be so much more profitable and in many ways be much better than actually about different locations, where to invest and why, and where to find those deals. So with all of that, we want to thank you for joining us today. We know we've covered a lot of information. I think we are right at our hour mark here, so thanks for staying with us all the way to the end. And we just want to share with you our contact information. Terri Garner, I'm right there on top. Alia Ott is the next one down. And then the rest of our team is listed there. We do have 6 of us that we all work together as Inspired Capital Partners. We have a $5 million fund that we are raising money for to bring in investing partners and then using that to do loan deals as well as non-performing note deals. And so we welcome any of you to contact us if you have questions or issues or just want to find a little bit more about the business or ways that we might be able to partner. We would love to talk with you, and good luck with buying the non-performing notes, with doing private lending, and we hope all goes well for you. This is a great time to do it. And anything else to add, Alia?
No, thank you, Terri, for wrapping up the presentation there. You know, our team welcomes any questions that you might have regarding notes or loans that we could either find for you or potentially buy from you. So with that, thank you so much, and we look forward to hearing from you very soon.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.